It's sometimes wild to realize just how influential Jane Austen was. It's 2025 and we still getting adaptations of her work. It's TV series mostly, but there was over a dozen of movie adaptations too. So here are all the Jane Austen movies ever made ranked from worst to the very best, and you'll be surprised to find out number 1. Dead last is Material Girls. This isn't even a real Austen adaptation. It's a modern, almost unrecognizable reimagining. If you want a smart update, go watch Clueless. This is not it. Material Girls is a teen comedy about two rich sisters, heiresses to a cosmetics empire in LA. When a scandal blows up, they lose everything and have to figure out life without money. It borrows the basic two sisters fall from wealth setup from Sense and Sensibility. But beyond that, there's nothing Jane Austen here. Just a couple of borrowed character names and a mess of tabloid plots and corporate fraud. Critics destroyed this movie. Rotten Tomatoes is just 4%. Metacritic, 17 out of 100. The Duff sisters starred and both got Razzie nominations for Worst Actress and Worst Screen Couple. The movie's characters are paper thin, the script is cliched, and the New York Times went so far as to call the characters nitwits and the movie an incompetent spin on a bad rich girl's story. Years later, Haley Duff looks back on it with nothing but good memories. She actually says it was one of her favorite experiences, and that fans still quote it to her. It's a disaster of a movie, but at least the people who made it had fun. One spot up is From Prada to Nada. This was billed as a Latina spin on Sense and Sensibility, moving the story to East Los Angeles. It's about two sisters, Nora, who's all about law school, and Mary, who's a shopaholic. After their dad dies, they suddenly go broke and have to leave their Beverly Hills mansion to live with an aunt in a working-class Latino neighborhood. That fish-out-of-water angle is straight out of Austen's original, but with new cultural layers. There's bilingual dialogue, Mexican-American family, and new versions of the classic Austen suitors. The movie was originally called Sense and Sensibilidad, just to make the Austen connection obvious, but they swapped it for a flashier title. It's not a direct adaptation, but the core is still there. Two sisters with opposite personalities trying to stick together through loss and romance. It's a predictable but pleasant Mexican-American take on Sense and Sensibility mostly. But Austen fandom was split. Some like the bilingual approach, others feel it just traded Austen's sharpness for soap opera drama. Netflix's take on Persuasion is honestly embarrassing. Even with Hollywood names like Henry Golding and Dakota Johnson, this thing is just awkward. Netflix was clearly hoping for another Bridgerton moment. The problem is, where Bridgerton is fun and self-aware, Persuasion acts like it's inventing the whole concept, and it just comes off flat. As an adaptation, it's a mess. Austen's original Persuasion is all about restraint and building up emotion quietly. This movie just swings between dull and broad, losing everything that made the book powerful. By the end, it's just boring. Not funny, not romantic, not even sad. Just pointless. Dakota Johnson is usually the best part of any bad movie, but even she can't save this. She plays Anne Elliot with this weird rom-com energy. Half the movie, she's either crying, drinking wine, or blurting out random one-liners in the middle of awkward social scenes. "Sometimes I have a dream that an octopus is sucking my face," she says at one point. "That's when I turned this off." This one isn't a real Austen adaptation, more of a spin-off, set in a Jane Austen theme park where actors pretend to be characters from the novels. Jane Hayes, played by Kerry Russell, is obsessed with Pride and Prejudice and blows her savings for the full Austen experience, hoping she'll find her own Mr. Darcy. There's lots of British romance jokes, wacky characters, and self-aware moments. It's goofy, but that's the point. Kerry Russell holds the whole thing together. Without her, it'd be completely unwatchable, but she makes Jane Hayes actually likable, and you buy into her search for love, even in this insane setup. The dialogue is loaded with references and satire, and it never takes itself too seriously. Somehow, this combination of romantic comedy and random humor actually works. There's even a little suspense over who's going to end up being her real Darcy. If you like a cheesy rom-com and get a kick out of British lit references, this one is genuinely fun. And also Jennifer Coolidge is in it, so if you need to sell your boyfriend on watching it, just tell him Stifler's mom shows up. This one's exactly what it sounds like. Classic Austen characters, but with zombies and martial arts. Production was a mess from day one, years stuck in development, actors and directors dropping out, even Natalie Portman was almost Elizabeth Bennet for a while. By the time Burstiers finally got it onto screens, nobody was really sure who the movie was for. Austen fans didn't want the gore, horror fans didn't want the romance, and critics, well, one of them called it the lowest form of mashup, a fascinating example of an idiotic culture gone horribly wrong. It landed a 47% on Rotten Tomatoes and tanked at the box office, pulling in $16 million against a $28 million budget. But here's the funny part. A chunk of Jane Austen fans actually love it. There's something kind of satisfying about watching the Bennet sisters slice up zombies with katanas, even if it makes zero sense. The whole thing ended up as a weird, mismatched footnote in Austen's history, a movie where Mr. Darcy gets to battle the undead. Nobody saw that coming. This one moves the story into present-day Atlanta, centering it around a black church community. Reverend Bennett's got 5 daughters to marry off, and that's the setup. The cast is solid, but the movie didn't get much critical attention. No Rotten Tomatoes score, which usually means pretty much nobody was watching. But what made this one stand out wasn't the story. It was the controversy. The film caught major backlash from black Christian women's groups, who slammed it for making women look desperate to find a husband. The movie got accused of turning church into a dating free-for-all. Some called the script outdated and flat-out insulting. Kind of ironic, because the whole point was to celebrate church and community, but the filmmakers ended up annoying the exact audience they were trying to reach. As a Jane Austen adaptation, it's honestly mid, fluffy, easy to watch, but nothing new. The only thing anyone really remembers is that off-screen drama. Someone at the studio decided to take Austen's Persuasion, dump it into present-day Manhattan, and call it modern Persuasion. The idea sounds harmless enough. Update the story, give it a Hallmark rom-com flavor, maybe draw in the new crowd. In reality, it's a low-budget update that made a lot of Austen fans wince. The main character, Wren, standing in for Anne Elliot, is written like a clumsy rom-com stereotype. At one point, she literally can't cross a room without tripping. The budget looks as cheap as it feels. Even people who wanted to like it admitted it looked like it was filmed on a shoestring. Critics called out the movie for losing everything that made Austen sharp and funny. The movie basically sanded off all the edges and wit that make Austen worth reading. 2 years later, this movie was eclipsed by Netflix's much-maligned Persuasion. Suddenly, modern Persuasion didn't look quite so terrible. Becoming Jane flips the usual script and puts Jane Austen herself in the spotlight, imagining her as the heroine of her own romantic drama. Anne Hathaway was cast as young Jane. When the news broke, British critics weren't subtle about their outrage. Americans weren't supposed to play England's Regency legend. But while Hathaway's performance slowly won people over, the movie's historical accuracy did not. Purists tore into it for inventing a dramatic romance between Jane and Tom Lefroy, calling it a cheap way to explain her genius by turning her into a lovesick cliché. The reality is, the movie plays fast and loose with the facts. Austen's own letters hint at a mild flirtation, nothing more. Becoming Jane just blows that up into a full-blown secret origin of Pride and Prejudice melodrama. But for all the complaints, the film delivers glossy, Regency-era romance, complete with longing stares, runaway elopements, and broken engagements. It's a soap, not a serious biography, but that's where the fun is. Pride and Prejudice is what happens when Jane Austen gets the full Bollywood treatment. This is Pride and Prejudice, but set in India. Elizabeth Bennet is now Lalita Bakshi, played by Aishwarya Rai. Mr. Darcy turns into a rich American hotel guy, and every scene explodes with color and musical numbers. Critics thought it was cheesy and shallow. They mocked it for naivety, worse production values than Hollywood and political correctness. But here's the twist. Fans actually stuck up for the movie. It's picked up a cult following, especially from South Asian viewers who loved seeing their own culture at the center of an Austen story for once. The musical numbers are catchy, the vibe is playful, and even the culture clash jokes hit if you're in the right mood. If you want serious Austen, look elsewhere. If you want shameless song and dance and some surprisingly sharp jabs at American arrogance, this one's worth a watch. It's divisive, but you can't say it's boring. Most people have never heard of this one. Imagine Pride and Prejudice, but instead of English countryside, you get Provo, Utah. It's a Mormon college setting with all the Bennett sisters as Brigham Young University students focused on dating and marriage, plus a heavy dose of church values. That means no sex before marriage, lots of scenes in church, and the usual multiply and replenish talk. The movie tries to be quirky, pokes fun at the local culture, but for a lot of people it just comes off as awkward or preachy. Some people say it's charming and hilarious in a so-bad-it's-good way, but others call it straight-up religious propaganda. A lot of Austen fans online warn people off, saying it's more about Mormon culture than anything Austen actually wrote. Outside Utah, almost nobody even saw it. The studio tried to edit out the Mormon parts and release it to a general audience, but that version flopped completely. This one's a modern ensemble dramedy about 5 women and 1 bewildered man who start a book club to read Austen's novels. What happens next is everyone's real life starts to weirdly match up with whatever Austen book they're reading. Some characters get new romances, others deal with breakups, and everyone's problems suddenly feel like something Jane Austen would have written about if she lived in California and texted. It's full of familiar faces, Emily Blunt, Maria Bello, and there's a lot of effort to match up each club member with their modern Austen character. But if you're not already an Austen fan, the whole thing can feel way too earnest, maybe even cheesy. Every problem gets solved, every romance gets a tidy ending. It's like comfort food. Mansfield Park is probably the most controversial Austen adaptation out there. In the original book, Fanny Price is quiet, gentle, and reserved. The 1999 movie basically gives her a personality transplant. In this version, Frances O'Connor plays Fanny as bold, witty, and sarcastic, a writer who jokes, flirts, and isn't above a little fibbing to get what she wants. She's basically Elizabeth Bennet dropped into a totally different story. That was only the start. The movie goes even further, dragging the novel's hints about the Bertram's slave plantation right onto the screen, and even the subplot with Maria and Mr. Crawford, which Jane Austen kept off page, becomes a full-on sex scene, witnessed by Fanny herself. Austen fans lost it. The Jane Austen Society of North America actually issued a formal complaint about Sir Thomas Bertram's portrayal as a lecherous slave owner. For them, it was just a step too far. The film turned Austen's subtle social critique into pure scandal and drama. Bridget Jones's Diary is one of the biggest Austen-inspired blockbusters, even if it's not a straight adaptation. Instead, you get a modern take on Pride and Prejudice, built around Helen Fielding's already iconic character. Casting this film turned into a whole saga. Renée Zellweger, a Texan, landed the role and instantly sparked outrage in the British press. She moved to London, gained over 20 pounds, mastered a posh accent, and even worked undercover at a publishing house. When the movie finally opened, the skeptics had to eat their words. Zellweger nailed it. Her English accent got called the best since Gwyneth Paltrow's Emma, and she even scored an Oscar nomination. Screenplay work from Emma Thompson, uncredited, gave the script even more bite. The movie took off, started the whole Bridget Jones franchise, and even the harshest Brits had to admit, Zellweger became Bridget. Clueless is a Beverly Hills teen comedy that's a clever update of Austen's Emma. It became a cult classic and launched Alicia Silverstone's career. The thing people still talk about, though, is the romance. Cher ends up with Josh, her ex-stepbrother, Paul Rudd. The movie goes out of its way to remind us they're not related by blood. Their parents' marriage was short, but that almost incest angle has always been internet fuel. Even Silverstone has commented that it never bothered her, because they are clearly not related. Some people side-eye Josh for being a college guy hanging around a high schooler, but honestly, the movie's so charming, most people just let it slide. Clueless outshined almost every other Austen movie of its era. even upstaging the 1996 Emma. It's still the gold standard for a modern update. Funny, clever, and iconic, whether you care about Jane Austen or not. 1996 was the year of dueling Emmas. Two adaptations hit at once. The big Hollywood movie starred Gwyneth Paltrow, while over in the UK, Kate Beckinsale led a TV version. Paltrow's film, directed by Douglas McGrath, drew skepticism at first. But Gwyneth pulled it off, to the point where most viewers never guessed she wasn't British. Her accent was so spot on, it set her up for later period roles, including her Oscar-winning turn in Shakespeare in Love. The TV movie across the pond was a different animal. Kate Beckinsale's Emma came off earthier and funnier, with a sardonic edge. The New York Times said she was plainer looking than Miss Paltrow's, and altogether more believable and funnier. Some Austen fans went for Beckinsale's no-nonsense approach. Others loved Paltrow's glam, romantic take. For a minute, it was a 90s Austen version of Team Edward versus Team Jacob. Beckinsale's Emma and Paltrow's Emma would later cross paths again in the Underworld movies of all places. This thing came out just before the world went into lockdown and delivered what's probably the thirstiest Austen movie ever. The visuals are full-on pastel overload, the jokes are sharp, and the sexual tension is off the charts. Forget the polite Regency facade. This one opens with Johnny Flynn's Mr. Knightley stripping down completely, shot from behind in all his period-accurate glory. Turns out men back then didn't do underwear. The whole film is cheeky, fast, and doesn't care who it offends. There's a wild sense of humor. Bill Nighy's dad routine and Miranda Hart's Miss Bates bring in the best supporting energy. Some fans loved how bold and weird it got, while old-school Austenites thought it tried too hard for style points over heart. Still, before COVID shut everything down, Emma gave us more tabloid gossip and thirsty Tumblr posts than any Austen movie since the 1995 Pride and Prejudice series. Joe Wright's Pride and Prejudice came in hot with romance cranked up to 11. If you ever saw people arguing about which Darcy is better, this movie is the reason. The UK version ends with a classic Austen finish, but US theaters got a bonus: Darcy and Elizabeth making out on the balcony. British fans hated it, said it was too Hollywood, and the Jane Austen Society even called it an insult to audience intelligence. Didn't matter, Americans loved it. Suddenly there was an international kissgate, people arguing online about which ending should be canon. There's the famous rain-soaked proposal that never happened in the book, but absolutely did happen in every fanfic for the next decade. Critics called the film lush and swoon-worthy, and Keira Knightley's performance as Lizzie Bennet even grabbed an Oscar nomination at 20. This movie turned a 200-year-old novel into a culture war between purists and shippers. If you want to see where modern Austen fandom found its voice, start here. If you want the catty, scandalous side of Austen, Love and Friendship delivers. Whit Stillman digs up her lesser-known novella, Lady Susan, and turns it into a riot. Kate Beckinsale plays Lady Susan as a total chaos agent, scheming, flirting, manipulating everyone, and somehow you love her for it. Critics and fans ate it up, calling it the most Oscar Wilde of Austen adaptations, full of wit and barbed gossip. With a 96% Rotten Tomatoes score, this is the highest-rated Austen movie that's also a full-on comedy roast of high society. If you want to see the bad girl version of an Austen heroine, Lady Susan is it. No lessons learned, no apologies, just a tidal wave of shade and cleverness. Watching her work the room is the closest we'll get to a period drama Mean Girls crossover. Now for the classic. Emma Thompson wrote the screenplay, starred as Eleanor Dashwood, and picked up an Oscar for her work, making her the only person to win Oscars for both acting and writing at the time. The off-screen drama was just as juicy. Thompson was in the middle of a public divorce from Kenneth Branagh, then fell in love with Greg Wise, who played Willoughby, right on set. Kate Winslet, as Marianne, even tried to play matchmaker. She and Wise went on one date, didn't click, and Winslet nudged Wise toward Thompson instead. The rest is happily ever after history. They married in 2003, and the tabloids had a field day. Sense and Sensibility kicked off the 90s Austen boom, and Thompson's Oscar speech, written in the style of Austen's diary, became an instant classic. She roasted her co-stars, made fun of their quirks, and won over the entire room. It's the rare case where the off-screen gossip matches the on-screen romance. The #1 spot goes to the film that started it all, 1940's Pride and Prejudice with Greer Garson and Laurence Olivier, 100% on Rotten Tomatoes, and still the blueprint for Hollywood's take on Austen. But this one is a time capsule, full of quirks, censorship, and old studio weirdness. First off, the costumes are wild. Huge poofy sleeves and frilly bonnets, more Gone with the Wind than actual Regency England. The story is MGM wanted to ride the wave of Gone with the Wind success, so they moved the setting up by 2 decades, raided old costume racks, and went full glam. Mr. Collins here is not a clergyman. He's Lady Catherine's librarian, because the Hays Code wouldn't let anyone mock clergy on screen. Lady Catherine herself gets turned from the ultimate villain into a secret matchmaker, just so the movie can have a 100% happy ending. Pride and Prejudice was released in the middle of World War II, with an all-British country house vibe meant to boost morale and goodwill toward Britain. It won an Oscar for art direction, and despite all the censors' weird edits, still managed to deliver Austen's wit and charm, if not her sharpest edges.